Hello, and welcome to Back to School in the Face of a Pandemic webinar series, part number 2. In part number 1, we covered processes, procedures, and best practices to help reduce the spread of COVID-19. In part 2, we will focus on maintaining healthy environments, including CDC guidelines, examples of their practical application, and implementation of those guidelines utilized by multiple different school districts. This presentation uses CDC guidelines along with practical policies from school districts around the country. In addition, the presentation shares support materials, products, and procedures to support those guidelines that can be found on Betco's Enhanced Facility Disinfection Program. Please note that every school system and district has unique state and local guidelines they must follow. This presentation is designed to help local school districts consider multiple options that best suit the needs of their particular situation. To start off, cleaning and disinfection is obviously one of the cores to what we are doing in these days of a pandemic to maintain healthy environments. The CDC is suggesting that we clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces, i.e. playground equipment, door handles, sink handles, drinking fountains, at least daily or even in between each use. Use of shared objects like gym equipment, PE equipment, art supplies, toys, and games should be limited or cleaned between use. The best objective is to develop a schedule for increased routine cleaning and disinfection. Ensure that your safe and correct use of storage of products, including storage securely away from children, and the use of disinfectants that meet the EPA N-list criteria. Products should never be stored near children or where there's not adequate ventilation. The use of little signs around the building, doorways, entrances and exits as to when that area was cleaned, who cleaned it, and time and date are also very effective in maintaining those weekly schedules. An example of a school policy for classroom cleaning, for example, is that classrooms will be provided with spray bottles, an EPA-approved endless disinfectant, paper towels, face shields, and gloves. Desks are also cleaned after every single period. Custodial staff will disinfect all high-frequency touch points every 2 to 3 hours. In order to accomplish that, they are hiring an additional 2 custodians in this particular facility for the day shift. Playground equipment will continue to be cleaned at least twice per week. One of the first steps to this is choosing the right disinfectant. Betco currently has 10 products on the EPA N-list approved. You can find all these on the betco.com site, as well as you can find them on the EFD site as well. But we have 10 products that you can choose from, depending on your situation and your needs. Just as important is how we clean. So not just the correct product that we're going to choose, but also the correct way that we're going to clean, and the cleaning procedures are also vitally important. There are a number of task cards that you can utilize set up with the proper tasks in step 3. So how to clean, say for example, I want to look up how to clean a hard non-porous surface. Here's how I can clean and disinfect. All my steps on a task card: read the label, the cleaning procedure, apply the solution, treat the solution, wait my proper time, and allow to dry. Also available in Spanish. So these are all available in multiple different ways, and you can give different examples of even like cleaning plexiglass. So plexiglass is one of those that we didn't have a ton of before the pandemic, but all of a sudden we're seeing plexiglass everywhere, whether it be at the checkout counter, at the grocery store, or even in between desks, as we'll note later on in this presentation. The CDC is also recommending to limit the use of shared items. So items that cannot be cleaned easily or items that are shared between kids should be very, very limited. So they're discouraging the sharing of those items from multiple kids within the same class. Keep children's belongings separated from each other, labeled containers, cubbies, and areas to ensure that they're not sharing materials. Ensure that you have adequate supplies in the facility. This is always challenging for schools in particular, but try and keep those materials to one group at a time. And then if you need to utilize them for another group, try and disinfect or clean them in between times. Avoid sharing electronic devices, toys, books, and other games and learning activities. Here's an example of a school district that has some limited resources, obviously, just like everybody, but they have a plan to deal with it. So they're going to limit the sharing of supplies, but those supplies that they have limited availability of, such as calculators in this case, they plan to sanitize between use. So when one class is done and they move in the next class, they will sanitize not just the desk, but also the equipment and the calculators in between. They're also asking parents to provide supplies for up to 3 months versus on a day-to-day basis, or even here's an annual usage. This way they can ensure that all the kids have their materials and they don't have to necessarily share supplies. The other challenge you're having is, of course, sharing lockers. And that is very common, especially in high school and middle school, where they share lockers. And they're trying to institute a platform in which they're not going to allow kids to share lockers. And they'll be monitored to ensure they only utilize their own locker. When it comes to critical touch points, it's great to have a list. And one of the ways that you can do this is, again, using the Betco EFD program. And we've created a number of different touch point lists, critical touch point lists. And we've developed them by market. So as you can see, we've got education, grocery, office. We've also got healthcare, manufacturing, hospitality, and restaurant. So if I jump back to the education touch point list, I can click on this and it'll download a Excel spreadsheet for me, in which I can pull up the Excel spreadsheet, and it allows me to customize this spreadsheet any which way I'd like. So I can make this custom for a particular room or for a particular custodial staff or an area of the building or a particular building. I can customize it. I can add, change, delete. Maybe I want to mark these areas, but this is not applicable, so I can remove it. Also note, it's also available in Spanish. So the great part about these is that they're already pre-built with all the major touch points, common touch points in all the areas. And so it's a matter of adding anything specific that you may need, as well as potentially changing or customizing them to exactly meet your needs. Transportation is also another area that schools are looking at in and tend to overlook at times. But kids congregate obviously on buses and major large transportation. So school buses are used for a whole lot of reasons, but how do we maintain safety within those within that busing? So first of all, drivers should always practice safe protocols when they're driving. Develop a schedule for increased routine cleaning and disinfection of those transport vehicles. So, you know, years past, it's hard telling how often those buses were cleaned, but today they're probably going to be cleaned twice a day. You'll see later on when we're talking about cleaning them in the morning and in the afternoon after use. So ensure that correct usage of storage of cleaning materials and disinfection products, including keeping that product away from kids. So just because we're going to be cleaning, we need to keep that away from kids and not just keep it out in the bus where anybody can get to it. The other thing a lot of schools are utilizing is the open air or ventilation within there. A lot of schools are keeping windows open on buses. Of course, you can only do that when the weather is permitting, but keep the windows open, and that fresh air and exchange of air is always great for reducing that contamination. Here's an example of a school district and their policy. So students will ride a bus to transportation, will ride a bus accordingly, and they will wear masks at all times while in the bus. They won't be allowed on the bus without a mask. They will sanitize their hands before boarding the bus. A lot of folks are adding hand sanitizing stations to the bus. Some are using a non-alcohol. Others are using an alcohol, but that more is dependent on your local district as well as your state regulations. Bus drivers are required to wear a mask unless it's deemed unsafe to do so. And then buses are also equipped with extra face masks and hand sanitizer as needed. Districts are also looking at evaluating all their bus routes, participation routes, and they're also looking at how they can change those routes to maximize their social distancing when possible. And as we discussed, windows on those buses will remain open, weather permitting. They're again exchanging that air on a regular basis. Buses are one way people get to school. Parents is another way. This is also kind of changing as we look at this. Parents driving their school kids to school must use a parent drop-off lane. Staff are available to pick up those kids when they get there, and parents wishing to park in the parking lot, that's fine, but they can drop their kids off at the sidewalk. They're avoiding parents entering and taking their kids into the classroom. So for many of us, for years, our little kids, we'd walk them all the way into the classroom in the beginning of the day and drop them off. But they're keeping people out of those buildings and literally just want the kids to enter. Elementary students are going to enter from their classroom on the exterior door rather than go through the main entrance. They're focusing, taking those kids directly to their classroom on the outside entrances of the building when possible. High school students, they're opening up additional areas. Again, they used to focus on having kids go through a central point in and out of the schools, and now they're saying, look, we're going to take these kids in and out to a point that's closest to their classroom. So there may be additional entrances and exits to a building for kids to go in and out. And then finally, staggered release for kids. Used to be the bell rang at 3 o'clock and everybody would leave. A lot of schools are moving towards releasing grades at a time or segments of that school at a time in order to give them time to get out, clear the hallways, and then release the next and the next and the next. So every school is a little bit different, but there are ways that you can stagger releases to avoid large crowds in hallways and such. The other thing to consider is a lot of these schools have been closed since March of 2020. Um, when you close up a building, you can get mold, you can get mildew, you can get buildup and things like that. A lot of these buildings haven't been cleaned heavily or haven't been gone through because there's nobody been in the building. Lack of air, lack of running HVAC systems. So ensuring that there's a project clean up front, number one, is critical. Number two, the CDC is always recommending ventilation. So the more that we can keep the windows open, the doors open, things like that, to allow for ventilation and that fresh air really helps reduce that spread and helps with the safety of all. Finally, watering systems. There again, buildings have been closed. So ensuring that those water systems are cleaned out, ensuring that all the sinks are operating and water sources are available. A lot of facilities are closing down sink stations or drinking fountains, for example, because they are a common touch point. Um, so they're actually closing them, but they are allowing kids to bring in their own water or their own containers to fill for the day, but they're not allowing drinking fountains to be open. But you can fill your water bottle there. Schools are also laying out their facilities differently. So obviously they're removing as much as they can out of those rooms that are unnecessary items that may be in that room so that they can create additional space between desks. They're turning desks in the same direction so that all the students are facing in the same direction. They're not facing each other or sitting side by side, and they're trying to create spaces within those schools as best as possible to create that 6 foot apart distance as much as possible. When they can't do that, they're utilizing physical barriers such as sneeze guards, partitions, in areas especially where you can't spread everybody out. They're putting tape on the floor, just like you see in the grocery store or other shopping areas, where they put tape on the floor as reminders to social distance and keep 6 feet apart. Class sizes are also being reduced for additional space between desks to keep kids as far as apart as possible. They're facing the same direction, and then signs are posted in the room to indicate proper social distancing. There again, reminders, and then tape and markers at 6 foot intervals. And then non-critical furniture and supplies are being removed to promote greater social distancing within those facilities. Communal spaces are another area the CDC is recommending that we social distance and clean and disinfect as much as possible. They're adding physical barriers and spaces in sinks, bathrooms, or areas that you just can't physically distance in those. Food service may be one of the largest challenges when it comes to education and the moving around of kids. The CDC is recommending that kids bring their own meals, or that when they do get served meals, they're served on individual plates instead of communal dining, like in a cafeteria. Um, they're suggesting the use of disposable food service items or cleanable dishes. Um, and they're suggesting, obviously, that the use of gloves um, and the use of hot water and or a dishwasher to clean utensils and materials used for food service. Individuals are always encouraged to wash their hands after removing gloves or when they're directly handling food service items. Um, Again, if they're offering food at events, prepackaged boxes or bag lunch versus the buffet or family style meals is highly encouraged. Touch points in food service are a little bit different. Here again, as I showed you on the Betco EFD site, you can go in and customize your own food service touch point list as well. You can also go to the touch point website on betco.com, and you'll see some examples of different touch points in restrooms, conference rooms, break rooms, or the office that are just quick visual maps showing you where you have critical touch points in a facility. Here's an example of a school policy for an elementary school. All elementary students will be served in a lunch in their classroom. So they're not going to go to a cafeteria. They're going to be served lunch. Classroom aides are going to drop off a bag or box lunches 15 minutes prior to the lunch period. Elementary student aides are going to help support and supervise students during that mealtime. And then serving cafeteria staff is going to use barrier protection, including gloves, face shield, and face masks. Students, teachers, and food service staff are going to wash their hands before and after every meal. So just like we talked about in part one, there are going to be designated times to go and wash your hands. There again, these are going to be segregated throughout the day, or staggered throughout the day, so that you don't have all the students from all the classes going in to wash their hands at one time. One of the great products to use, so since we're serving within a classroom itself, it comes down to how are we going to clean and disinfect and sanitize those desks, which now become food contact surfaces. One of the best products for that was just released by Betco just a couple of months ago. It's a brand new product. It's called Green Earth Fight Back, and it is on the EPA list and disinfectant list. And one of the great things about this product, it is not only a disinfectant with a 3 to 5 minute kill time, but it's also a sanitizer. The key to this product is that it's super safe, in that it is it has been approved by the EPA for design for environment. So it is incredibly environmentally friendly, but it's also designated one of the safest products by the EPA with all zeros as hazard warnings on the product. So can't get lower than 0. So it's a fantastic cleaner, but yet it's very, very safe. The other key to this product for use in schools, and particularly desks, is that it is a food safe contact sanitizer. So it does not require wiping the desk once you've cleaned that surface. You don't need to rinse that product at all, and you can utilize that as a food contact surface. More information you can find on betco.com, and you can read all about that particular product. It'll tell you everything you need to know, SDSs, and safety information on that product. Here's another example of a school plan for feeding kids in middle and high school. So students will wear masks to and from lunch areas. When they're eating, they can remove them, obviously. Students who purchase lunch will be released to the cafeteria in a staggered schedule. There again, not everybody going at the same time. They'll be required to maintain 6 feet social distancing and wear masks while they're in line. Service cafeteria will use barrier protection, gloves, face shield, etc. And students and staff will wash hands before and after every meal. They're also adding additional lunch periods. So they may shorten the overall lunch period for groups of students, but they may add additional times for lunches, so whereby they have fewer students in the cafeteria at the same time, designing for additional space, enabling social distancing. When it comes to food service in large areas, one of the great products that we manufacture is called Sanibet multi-range. This product is highly dilutable and has a disinfection rate at a 1 to 213 dilution, and can go down to as little as a 1/4 ounce per gallon for sanitizing. So if we're talking about tabletop sanitation and things like that, when the kids are coming in and out and you're cleaning and sanitizing those tabletops, this is the product of choice. Same product you see and recognize when you go in and out of restaurants is the same product they're utilizing to clean and disinfect, sanitize those tabletops and any food contact surfaces. Again, additional information can be found on betco.com, and you can get all the details on that particular product, all the sizes, availability, and safety data on that material. There are additional information on all this material, programs, processes, as well as print material that is available on the betco.com Enhanced Facility Disinfection website. And you can follow all 5 steps throughout the whole program, step 1 through 5. And if you'd like, you can even watch a video over the entire platform. And it's a quick 25-minute webinar, essentially, that goes through all 5 steps of the EFD program. If you'd like additional information in top of that, I shared in part 1. The CDC has a nice download as well with checkpoints for schools. And there again, you can go to that site, and they have a nice checkpoint that I covered in part 1. Finally, if you have additional questions, if you want to talk to a Betco rep, or if you just want to reach out, you can always contact us at www.betco.com. You can contact us at the link above, or you can call 1-888-GO-BETCO. Thank you, and look forward to part 3.